This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. Our special guest is British journalist, author, and candidate for Parliament, Rory Stewart. He was Deputy Governor of Mizan Province in Iraq when it was occupied by the U.S. and British-led coalition. He wrote a book about his experience entitled The Prince of the Marshes, a bestseller. Amazingly, he walked across Afghanistan in the winter of 2001 to 2002, wrote a book about that too. He also walked across Pakistan, Iran, India, and Nepal, a journey of 6,000 miles over 2 years. During that time, he stayed in 500 different village houses. Mr. Stewart is the recipient of many awards. He currently runs the Turquoise Mountain Foundation, a British charity, the goal of which is cultural development in Afghanistan. And we're so pleased to have him with us here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
In July of 2008, you wrote the cover story for Time magazine called How to Save Afghanistan. You mentioned you thought NATO had to withdraw. Do you still feel that way today?
What I said is that NATO needs to reduce, not withdraw. I think we're in a very dangerous situation where we tend to be black and white. We think either we increase troops or we need to get out. In fact, I believe what Afghanistan needs is neither of those things. What it needs is a light, long-term presence. We need to be patient. We need to think about keeping a few troops on the ground for a very long period.
Okay. President Obama recently signed off on General McChrystal's recommendation to send more troops into Afghanistan. Are you disappointed with President Obama for that?
I think that was the wrong decision. I think now the key thing is to think about the future. So we need to think about the next 5 to 10 years. We cannot sustain this number of troops indefinitely. It's not going to work in Afghanistan. It won't even work domestically. I don't think American voters or European voters are going to be able to keep over 100,000 troops forever. So what we need to think about is beginning to draw down without rushing to the exit. To think about how to get a political solution in Afghanistan, and we need to think about how to get this very poor, fragile, traumatized country to come together.
Some say that if the U.S. pulls out of Afghanistan, the Taliban would take over. Does that pose a security risk? And in fact, is that what would happen, in your view?
The Taliban is much weaker than they were in 1995 when they took the country. They discredited themselves when they were in government. They had a very ignorant, stupid, and brutal form of government. Most Afghans in the center and the north of the country hate them and wouldn't put up with them. There isn't a civil war in the way there was in the 1990s, so the Taliban are very unlikely to be able to take over the country. If they were able to increase their presence in the south and the east, and they definitely have some presence there, I think it is also very unlikely that they would work again with al-Qaeda. It's important to have a distinction between the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
If the U.S. does withdraw, can the Afghan people take care of themselves right now?
No, I think the Afghan government seriously lacks capacity. I think it would be very dangerous for that reason to withdraw entirely. If you were to withdraw entirely, you would increase the likelihood of a civil war. Not of a Taliban takeover, but you'd increase the likelihood of a fight between the Taliban and the other groups.
Can the Taliban be negotiated with at all? Could it be part of a democratic government in any way?
I think the Taliban can be negotiated with. Certainly what would emerge from that would not resemble some Jeffersonian democracy. The Taliban, as you can imagine, are committed to certain visions of Afghanistan, which people such as myself find a bit troubling. But in the end, and this of course is true, I suppose, as much in Northern Ireland as it is in Afghanistan, a political negotiation is something that's necessary.
Rory, can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in Afghanistan?
We're working in the center of the old city of Kabul. We've been very lucky to get support from the US government, from USAID. We are working to set up a clinic. We've got a secondary school, we've got a primary school. We also train traditional craftspeople, women and men, in woodwork, calligraphy, ceramics, and we sell their traditional craft products abroad and bring that money back into restoring the old city. Most recently, we've also tried to bring in water supply, sewerage, and repair historic buildings. So 550 people working with us. Of those, 95% are Afghans, and it's been a very exciting project.
It's helping small businesses in the region too.
Yeah, we work with businesses. We also work with the community. The idea is that we end up with a more prosperous, developed community in the center of the old city of Kabul who can sustain and support themselves.
Is the work you're doing there dangerous at all to any of the people involved in it?
Yes, work in Afghanistan is always dangerous. We had an attack about 3 weeks ago where the police ended up firing their weapons for about 3 hours off the top of our office building in the center of Kabul. That's obviously very concerning. And we're very keen to try to work with the community to complete the project. It's for the community's benefit without too many security risks, but it's definitely not a safe environment.
You've written extensively about Iraq. Now, if you were to write a book about Iraq like you did about Afghanistan, it would be How to Save Iraq. What would you say in the book, do you think?
Iraq has a lot of advantages that Afghanistan lacks. Iraq is a much wealthier country. It's got oil income. It's a much more educated country. It's got much more developed institutions. So if you were, broadly speaking, looking at the income indicators, the economy, the society, you'd probably be more optimistic about Iraq than you would be about Afghanistan. And so in the case of Iraq, I think I would favor withdrawal, leaving the country. In the case of Afghanistan, I'd favor a light, long-term international presence.
You think Iraq is stable enough now to function if the U.S. just pulls out immediately?
I think Iraq is in a difficult situation, right? It's fragile, unstable, in the way that many states in the Middle East are. But America has many responsibilities and interests in the world. And I would say it's a rational decision now to leave Iraq.
What's your take on the recent elections in Iraq?
Well, they're exciting. I mean, in the sense that this is one of the most vibrant democracies in the Arab world. I mean, almost the only really vibrant democracy in the Arab world. But it's not yet settled into the kinds of things we expect of a democracy: protection of minority rights, good security, good order. It's a pretty chaotic situation. We're going to have to see over the next month how things settle down and whether we can get a coalition government in place.
If the coalition forces withdraw from Iraq, some say there could be a civil war between the Shia and Sunni. Is that a realistic possibility?
Yeah, it remains a possibility. If you were making that decision, I think it would be a very tough one. None of us can predict the future. Right? These are countries, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about Lebanon or Syria or Iraq or Iran, these are countries which have structural challenges. They've had very difficult histories. There is suspicion between groups. But if you were saying to me, would I make the decision to withdraw? Yes, I would take that risk and I would withdraw.
All right, turning to British politics now, recent polls show conservatives like yourself are starting to regain some momentum, but the lead isn't as big as it used to be. What is the problem, do you think?
I think one thing that we need to do as a Conservative Party is have a simple message, a clear, simple message. And British politics obviously is different to American politics, but in the case of British politics, we should be focusing on reducing the deficit, reducing regulation, and bringing back some common sense.
As we understand it, recent polls suggest that the country could face what's known as a hung parliament. Now, is that the equivalent of a gridlock here in the States?
Yeah, it would be a gridlock situation. It would be a situation where neither party had enough power to really carry its legislation through.
But there is a difference in the form of governments.
Well, the difference in the United Kingdom is that we've got a third party which could hold the balance of power. So you'd have a situation where neither the Labour nor the Conservative Party had an overall majority, and the Liberal Democrats could hold the balance of power.
What are the key issues facing Britain as it moves forward?
We've got a £180 billion, right? That's nearly $300 billion structural deficit. It doesn't sound that much perhaps in American terms, but in terms of our country that means that we're spending more on just servicing the debt interest every year than we are on almost any other spending. And it's very difficult to reduce. A lot of it is very, very fixed, and it was dependent on an income stream from the banking sector. We were very dependent on these very high-risk moves made in the banking sector. Now that that income isn't coming in anymore, it's very difficult to know how we're going to have a credible plan to reduce.
In recent years, the term trillion has come into the English vocabulary here in the States. We never even used the word years ago, but that's where we are here.
Sure. Well, I mean, the great thing about the United States, of course, is, as has happened a number of times, is that when your economy gets going, it's such a great, vibrant machine that it can eliminate a deficit quite quickly. In Britain, our growth levels are slower, so reducing this deficit is going to be a difficult task.
Although Britain is part of the EU, it has not joined the euro. Now, some say the euro is in danger of collapsing as a currency. What's your opinion?
I don't think the euro is in danger of collapsing, but I think there's a very big problem, which is that a single currency is covering some very different economies. So the Greek economy, obviously, is much weaker than the German economy, and they're all tied into a single currency. I think the British decision not to join the euro has probably been vindicated. The strains and stresses that are being felt in the Eurozone are ones that we're probably lucky to be able to avoid. I mean, we can, for example, if necessary, float and devalue our currency to get our economy stable again in a way that the Greeks, for example, would not be able to.
Rory Stewart, good luck in your election, and we appreciate you spending some time with us here at Newsmax and sharing your views.
Thank you very much indeed.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.
Sarah Palin's new book, Going Rogue in American Life, will be released on November 17th. You can be among the first to get your copy. Check out our incredible free offer for Sarah's new book. Just go to Newsmax.com and click on the top banner for this great offer. Act today.